There's a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you catch your reflection and pause. Not because of the lines or the gray, but because something feels off. Like your hair is still telling an old story that your spirit outgrew long ago. This video isn't about covering anything up. It's about uncovering the confidence that's been there all along. Whether you're craving softness, ease, or just a way to feel like you again, the right haircut can gently open that door. A few years ago, my friend June, 64, retired postal worker, fiercely independent, told me over lunch, "I don't want to look younger. I just want my outside to catch up with how alive I still feel inside." Her hair had thinned, dulled, and she'd stopped going to salons because she felt invisible in the chair. So, one Saturday, I invited her over with some herbal tea, and we trimmed, shaped, softened, nothing drastic. But when she looked in the mirror, her eyes welled up. "I recognize her," she whispered. That's the power of a thoughtful cut. No dye, no drama, just 3 simple shapes that can lift your whole spirit, starting with one that brings the light back to your face. Ready? Let's begin. Do you know that feeling when you're checking out at the grocery store, the cashier calls you ma'am, and you smile, but inside you wonder when your hair started making you look more tired than kind? The soft layered bob isn't just a haircut, it's a gentle lift. It frames the face, adds volume around the crown, and brings back movement where hair tends to fall flat with age. No harsh lines, no complicated blowouts, just a cut that works with your natural texture, not against it. Last spring, my neighbor Lorraine, she's 67 and runs a small antique shop downtown, came over for tea. She'd just gotten back from her granddaughter's dance recital, and I noticed she seemed unusually quiet. "Everyone kept asking if I was tired," she said softly. I wasn't. I just looked it. Her hair was one length, heavy at the sides, and it weighed her whole expression down. The next week, she visited a stylist I trust. They gave her a soft bob, chin length, light layers, a bit shorter in the back. Nothing drastic. But when she walked into the diner the next Saturday morning, her smile reached all the way up to her eyes. She told me, "I didn't know a haircut could make me feel present again." As women over 60, many of us silently carry the fear of fading, not just in the mirror, but in how others see us. When hair loses its life, we start to feel invisible. But something as simple as a reshaped cut can shift how the world greets us, and more importantly, how we greet ourselves. I chose the bob myself after turning 65. I didn't want anything dramatic, just something that wouldn't drag my face down. And what surprised me most wasn't how others reacted. It was how I did. I started wearing my lipstick again. I looked in the mirror longer, not with vanity, but with warmth. Light doesn't just come from outside. The right shape lets it shine from within. And if you're looking for something with a bit more spirit, a cut that moves with you and mirrors your spark, wait until you see what's next. What's one memory you have of a haircut that changed how you felt, not just how you looked? I'd love to hear your story. Isn't it funny how sometimes we keep our hair long out of habit, not because we love it, but because we've had it that way for decades? As if the length is tied to our femininity or our past. The truth is, the right pixie cut doesn't take something away. It brings something forward. It carves out your cheekbones, draws attention to your eyes, and lifts the face in a way creams never could. But more than that, it tells the world, I'm still here, and I still shine. I think of Carol, a retired literature professor I met at a poetry reading in Seattle. She was 72, wore these lovely tortoiseshell glasses, and had this spiky salt and pepper pixie that looked like confidence incarnate. We got to talking afterward, and she told me she'd worn her hair shoulder length her whole life, until the day her husband passed. "I didn't want to disappear," she said. "Grief made me quiet, but I needed something that made me feel alive again." She went to a stylist, pointed to a photo and said, "Let's go short." And when she saw herself afterward, I didn't cry from missing him. I cried from finding me again. See, the pixie isn't about rebellion, not at our age. It's about freedom. It says, I'm not afraid to show my face. I'm not hiding behind hair or behind time. And when it's done right, a bit longer on top, soft at the ears, textured around the crown, it's striking in the most graceful way. I tried a pixie once when I turned 60. Just for the summer, I told myself. But I kept it for 2 years. It made getting ready feel light. 5 minutes, a dab of cream blush, and I looked fresh even on grocery runs. And people saw me differently. Not younger, necessarily, but sharper, more awake. Short hair doesn't make you less of who you are. Sometimes it reveals the part of you that's been waiting to be seen. And if you're someone who wants softness and movement, but isn't ready to go that short, don't worry. The next cut might be just what your reflection's been waiting for. Would you ever try something bold with your hair? Not to impress, but to reclaim something for yourself? Let's talk in the comments. Do you ever glance in the mirror and think, why do I look more tired than I feel? Not sad, not worn out, just a little faded around the edges? That's where the gentle shag steps in. Soft layers that move with you, not against you, and curtain bangs that part like old theater drapes, revealing your eyes with grace instead of hiding your face. It's the kind of haircut that lifts without lifting, lightens without chopping, and most of all, refreshes without trying too hard. I met Joan at a farmer's market last fall. She was selling handmade beeswax candles in vintage teacups. I complimented her scent blends, but honestly, it was her hair I noticed first. A tousled shoulder-length cut, feathered just right, with the most delicate fringe brushing her temples. "You make this look effortless," I told her. She laughed and said, "I needed something that let me keep my length but gave me back my spark." Joan had just retired from teaching 3rd grade and wanted to mark the change, not with a drastic cut, but with something that felt playful again. "These bangs," she said, tapping her forehead. "Best decision I've made in years. They hide the frown lines but show my eyes. It's like my hair remembered who I was before I got too serious." And that's the beauty of the shag with curtain bangs. It's for the woman who's still curious, who doesn't want sharp angles or anything that screams for attention, just movement, softness, a little swing when she turns her head. The layers add volume without teasing. The bangs frame the eyes gently, drawing people in instead of pushing them away. I wore a version of this cut during the years I ran my boutique in Austin. It kept me cool in the Texas heat, let me tie it up when I was busy and fall loose when I wasn't. And the compliments I received weren't about how young I looked, they were about how alive I seemed. That's what we're after, isn't it? Sometimes softness is the strongest message you can send. And if you're wondering how to make sure a new haircut actually suits you, your face, your hair texture, your daily rhythm, don't worry. In the next part, I'll share how to talk to your stylist so your reflection matches what you feel inside. What's one thing you wish your haircut could do for you? Lift, frame, soften, simplify. I'd love to hear. Do you know that quiet hesitation when you sit in the salon chair, look into the mirror and think, I hope she understands what I mean? It's a feeling many of us know too well. Not quite fear, but a soft uncertainty, because somewhere along the way, we stopped asking for what we truly want. For so many women I've met, the hardest part of getting a haircut isn't the cut, it's the conversation that comes before it. We downplay our needs. We nod politely, even when our heart's whispering, that's not me. And we walk out, not unhappy, but a little disappointed, like we missed a chance to reconnect with ourselves. Let me tell you about Frances, a retired music teacher from Vermont. She hadn't had a real conversation with a stylist in over 5 years. She kept asking for just a trim, not because it was what she wanted, but because it felt safer than explaining. Then one day, her granddaughter, bless her heart, said, "Grandma, your hair doesn't match your laugh." That sentence stayed with her. At her next appointment, she brought in 2 old photos, one from a 1978 summer concert where her curls bounced like music, and another from her 50th birthday, eyes glowing beneath soft side bangs. She placed them gently on the counter and said, "I don't want to look younger. I want to feel more like her again." That shift, the shift from asking for a haircut to sharing a memory, changed everything. Her stylist leaned in, listened, suggested gentle layers that hugged her cheeks, not buried them, added soft movement around her eyes. And when Frances looked in the mirror afterward, she didn't cry because of the change. She cried because she recognized herself again. Here's what I've learned after years of being behind the chair and then sitting in it as a woman myself. When we speak from feeling, not fear, our reflection starts to make sense again. Try using phrases that focus on you. I'd love something that softens around the eyes. Or, my mornings are slow. I need something easy but kind. Or even, I want my haircut to match how I feel when I dance alone in the kitchen. You don't need fancy language. You just need honesty. Bring photos, real ones, not Pinterest perfect strangers. Pictures from moments you felt free, alive, beautiful in your own skin. And tell your stylist what those moments meant. Let your haircut come from there. Because a good cut doesn't start with scissors. It starts with your story. The most beautiful look is the one you describe with your heart. Now that we've opened the door to honest conversations, how do you actually choose the haircut that matches not just your face, but your rhythm of living? That's what we'll explore next. What's the one thing you wish your hair could say about you, without words? Tell me below. Do you notice how a pair of earrings can suddenly lift your whole face? Or how the right glasses make your haircut feel complete? It's not vanity, it's harmony. Sometimes it's not the haircut that needs changing, it's the small things that live around it. I once had tea with Eleanor, an old friend from my design days. She had just gotten a fresh bob, neat, clean, but something still felt unfinished. She kept tugging at her cardigan, looking in the mirror over the fireplace. I asked, gently, "Do you like it?" She nodded, but her eyes wandered. I took off her narrow black reading glasses and handed her a pair I had in my bag, rounded tortoiseshell with a gentle amber hue. The effect? Immediate. Her eyes lit up, her cheeks softened, and she said, "Why do I look warmer all of a sudden?" It's the quiet architecture around your cut, glasses, earrings, necklines, that can either fight your look or frame it with grace. I've seen this so often. A lovely shag ruined by two square frames, or a soft pixie dulled by heavy hoops that pull the eye downward. After 60, our features shift, cheeks soften, jawlines mellow, and our eyes carry more wisdom than tension. So the accessories we choose need to echo that shift. Look for frames that follow the natural lift of your cheekbones. Try earrings that move, delicate drops, small hoops, something that dances near your face without demanding attention. Even the neckline of your blouse matters. A soft boat neck or slight V can elongate, guide the gaze upward, and let your haircut breathe. Personally, I keep 3 pairs of earrings on rotation. One for light, one for length, one for laughter. That's what I call the gold trio. And I always ask myself before leaving the house, do my details tell the same story as my hair? Because what's around your face is part of your story too. A frame isn't the art, but it tells you how to see it. And now that we've explored what surrounds your face, let's take a gentle turn inward. What if the real secret to looking younger isn't about looking at all? Tell me, what's one accessory or detail that makes you feel instantly more like you? Have you ever noticed how some women seem to glow without doing much at all? You can't quite point to their haircut or outfit, but there's something undeniable about their presence. They walk in and the room responds, not because of what they wear, but how they carry themselves. That's what I like to call the invisible lift. Let me tell you about someone I met last fall at a small book club gathering in a friend's garden in Vermont. The leaves were golden, cider was warm, and conversations lingered like the scent of cinnamon. In walked Carol, a retired teacher in her early 70s. She wasn't in a particularly standout outfit, simple beige trousers, soft wool sweater, gray hair pulled into a low bun, but she walked with such gentle confidence, such open energy, that people made space for her without realizing it. She smiled with her eyes, sat tall but relaxed, and radiated a kind of warmth that needed no introduction. It wasn't her blouse or earrings that gave her that glow. It was the way she showed up in her body. And I've come to believe that after 60, one of the most powerful forms of beauty is posture, not just of the spine, but of the spirit. I know it's not something we talk about often when we're thinking of haircuts or how to look younger, but truthfully, no haircut, no matter how perfectly layered, can outshine the way we carry our energy. You can have a fresh bob, a polished pixie, or soft bangs that frame your face beautifully. But if your shoulders are slouched with self-doubt, if your gaze drops every time someone compliments you, the glow gets muted. A woman's presence is like her second skin. And after decades of life, we've gathered a lot. Memories, worries, responsibilities. Sometimes, those things weigh us down physically. I've worked with women who stood in front of the mirror and said, "I feel frumpy," when in reality, all they needed was to uncurl from the decades they've carried and take one deep breath with their chest open. One gentle thing that's helped me, and I offer it to you not as a fix but a daily whisper, is the Mirror Minute. Each morning, I take a moment before doing anything. I stand in front of my mirror, barefoot, hands by my sides, and I breathe. I lift my chest ever so slightly, drop my shoulders, and soften my jaw. I don't criticize or pick apart. I just stand and remember that this body, my posture, tells a story. And I get to choose whether it's one of shrinking or rising. There's also energy, that invisible current that we give off without speaking. You know when you pass by someone and you just feel their grounded, generous presence? That's what I want for us. Not more product, not perfection, just presence. And when that energy lines up with a haircut that reflects who you are, whether it's sharp and confident or soft and flowing, you don't just look younger. You feel alive. You become magnetic not for what you're wearing, but for how you're being. The real lift doesn't come from the scissors. It comes from standing in who you've become. So as we get ready for the last part of this journey together, take a moment with me. Breathe. Gently pull your shoulders back, not like a soldier, but like a woman who remembers she deserves space. Walk to the mirror not to find flaws, but to greet someone wise, beautiful, and worthy. Now I'd love to know, what's something you do, daily, weekly, even rarely, that brings you back to yourself, not just in how you look, but how you feel? Let's share in the comments. You never know whose posture your words might lift. Do you remember the moment you spotted your first gray hair, not with fear but with curiosity? There's something oddly beautiful about it, like finding a silver thread stitched through time. Still, letting go of coloring after years, or decades, can feel like stepping into the unknown. You wonder, will I look washed out? Will people think I've given up? Or will I finally feel like myself again? Let me tell you about Marianne, a retired hospice nurse I met in Oregon during a workshop on personal renewal. She had just turned 67 and was growing out years of dark brown dye. Every 2 weeks at the salon, she sighed, I felt like I was covering up the best part of me. But going gray wasn't about neglecting herself. It was about honoring the woman she'd become. Still, she didn't want a stark line across her head, and she definitely didn't want to chop everything off. What changed everything was one smart, gentle move, a layered shoulder-length cut with soft feathering and subtle ash highlights to ease the transition. It wasn't dramatic, but it was deliberate. That's the heart of the transition cut. It doesn't rush you or push you into a bold decision you're not ready for. Instead, it respects your process. Think soft face-framing layers that lighten the ends, blending the colored strands with the natural silver underneath. Or a textured shag that hides regrowth with intention, not camouflage. These cuts allow the silver to arrive like an old friend, not a surprise guest. Underneath the technical part, though, lies something deeper. Going gray touches more than just the strands on our head. It touches pride, identity, the image we see in the mirror, and the memory of how we used to feel. I know many women who whisper, "What if my husband doesn't like it?" Or, "What if people think I'm older than I am?" But I also know the feeling of walking out of the salon, untouched by dye, and thinking, finally, I'm not hiding anymore. When I stopped coloring my own hair at 62, it wasn't easy. I spent a few months tied up in scarves, avoiding mirrors, questioning myself. But when the silver grew in and caught the morning light just right, it felt like breathing in fresh mountain air. There was a new kind of beauty, not loud, not trendy, but calm, assured, free. Letting go of dye isn't about giving in to age, it's about stepping into grace. If you're considering the journey, start small. Maybe just ask your stylist to soften your shape, lighten the ends, or create a cut that flatters the new tones coming in. There's no rush, just rhythm, no judgment, just becoming. And you, what's been your biggest hesitation or your quietest hope when you think about going gray? I'd love to hear it in the comments. Sometimes the softest changes lead to the strongest sense of self. We've traveled through 7 gentle steps together, each one a quiet invitation to return to ourselves. From the softness of a layered bob to the bold whisper of a pixie, from shifting posture to embracing silver with grace. We've talked about face-framing touches, honest conversations with our stylists, and the little details that make a haircut feel like home. Now, I want to ask you to choose just one thing to try this week. It doesn't have to be drastic. It could be scheduling that long postponed trim, or simply standing in front of your mirror with a soft smile, not to critique, but to greet the woman you see there, gently, kindly, the way you would greet a dear old friend. You don't need to look 30 again. That's not the goal. You need only to look like the woman you are now, wise, radiant, entirely your own, and to feel a quiet pride rise up in you, simply for choosing to care, to reflect, and to keep becoming. Thank you for sitting here with me, truly. Like 2 old friends sharing tea and stories. No rush, no judgment, just warmth. And if there's a haircut, a look, or even a moment in the mirror that made you feel most like you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. I'll be reading with both ears and heart open.